billionaire's son was dying. A dangerous illness, slow and invisible, a rare blood disease consuming him from within. Only one blood type could save him, AB negative, found in less than 1% of the population. And consistently, month after month, one woman showed up to give. She rolled up her sleeve, donated her blood, then returned to mopping floors in the same hospital, 3 floors below the child whose life she was quietly sustaining. She had no idea whose veins her blood was flowing through. And he, a man whose empire was worth billions, a man who had built his fortune on saving children's lives through technology, had no idea that the only thing keeping his son breathing was a woman he passed every single day without truly seeing. Then one night he discovered the truth. He learned everything. And the woman who had been saving his child all this time was right there, on her knees, scrubbing someone else's blood from the hospital floor. What he did next would either transform her life forever or reveal that even gratitude from the powerful can carry a hidden cost. Imani Brooks had just finished another long night shift. Her feet throbbed inside shoes that had long since passed the point of comfort. Her hands were dry and cracked from the harsh disinfectant that killed everything on her skin, including the skin itself. Her scrubs had faded from deep navy to something closer to gray. She carried the scent of bleach, floor wax, and other people's pain. It was early morning. She should have gone home to her small apartment and fallen into bed until her next shift began. Instead, Imani turned left at the lobby, past the cafeteria and the gift shop, down the hallway most people in the hospital never knew existed. She walked into the blood bank. The nurse at the desk looked up and smiled. She knew Imani by now. Back again, steady as ever. Imani sat in the donation chair with the ease of long habit, as if offering a piece of herself were simply another ordinary morning. The nurse tied the tourniquet and tapped for a vein. "You know," she said, while prepping the needle, "your blood type is something special. A B negative. Less than 1% of people have it. We're always short. There are only a handful of regular donors in the whole city with your type, and most of them don't come in as faithfully as you do." Imani watched the needle slide in. Watched her blood, dark and warm, begin to fill the bag. She didn't flinch. She never did. "Do you ever wonder who gets it?" the nurse asked gently. "Your blood, I mean. We can't tell you, of course. Donor anonymity. Once it leaves here, it gets processed, typed, cross-matched, and sent wherever it's needed. You'll never know whose body it ends up in, and they'll never know it came from you." Imani shook her head. "I don't need to know. My mother used to say something back home. She said blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself." The words carried the quiet weight of something believed, down to the bone. The nurse finished the draw, labeled the bag, and placed it in the cooler with the others. Imani's blood would be tested, processed, and delivered to a patient soon. That was the system. Anonymous, efficient, invisible. One person gives. Another receives. Neither ever knows the other exists. Imani pressed a cotton ball to the inside of her elbow. She had done this many times before, month after month of quiet giving. She didn't do it for recognition or money. There was no money. Blood donation is voluntary. The only payment was a cookie and a small cup of orange juice, which she always accepted because she had learned long ago never to refuse free food when it was offered. She sat in the recovery chair for the required time, drank her juice, ate her cookie, then stood, put on her jacket, and walked out the same way she had come in, quietly, unseen. She didn't know whose veins her blood would reach. She didn't need to know. But if she had known, everything would have been different. Stay with me, because the child receiving Imani's blood at this very moment is someone whose story will stay with you. Imani worked nights at Hopewell Children's Hospital. Evening until morning, several nights a week, sometimes more when overtime was needed, which was most weeks. Her title was certified nursing assistant, the lowest rung on the ladder. The pay was modest. After taxes, it was barely enough to survive in a city where even a small, safe apartment cost more than that. On paper, her job was simple. Change linens, empty bedpans, wipe surfaces, take vital signs, help patients eat, help them to the bathroom, do the things illness had stolen. In reality, CNAs are the ones who touch patients most and get paid least. Doctors visit briefly. Nurses manage segments of the shift. CNAs live inside those rooms. They hear the crying in the small hours. They hold a child's hand when parents have gone home to rest. They notice the subtle change in breathing before any monitor sounds. And they are invisible. Doctors walked past Imani as if she were furniture. Nurses gave instructions without looking up. Families sometimes spoke about her while she stood right there, as if she couldn't hear. She was background, a body that mopped and lifted and wiped so the important people could do their important work. Her supervisor, Derek Lang, made certain she remembered her place. He ran night operations with the conviction that efficiency was sacred and compassion was a luxury that slowed the work. "You're a CNA, Imani, not a therapist. Clean the room and move on." He had said it not long ago when he found her sitting with a frightened child who couldn't sleep. Imani had been telling the child a story about a bird that flew across the ocean. Derek wrote her up. "You have rooms to turn over tonight. I don't care if the kid is crying. That's what nurses are for. Do your job or I'll find someone who will." Imani hadn't argued. She had learned long ago that arguing with people who controlled your paycheck was a luxury she could not afford, not when her mother needed her. Maeve Brooks was in her later years and fading slowly. Advanced chronic kidney disease. She needed dialysis several times a week. Even with insurance Imani had struggled to secure through the hospital, the out-of-pocket costs were crushing. Copays, medications, transportation, the special diet Maeve required, but could rarely afford. The total each month was more than Imani earned. She found the money anyway, extra shifts, one meal a day, shoes worn until the souls separated. She never mentioned her mother at work, never complained, never asked for help. She simply showed up, did her job, gave her blood regularly, and went home. Every morning after her shift, Imani walked to the bus stop a few blocks away. Every morning she passed the same massive billboard for Vitalis AI, saving children's lives with the power of AI. Beneath the words, "A smiling child," beneath that, a logo worth billions. Imani passed it without a second glance. She didn't know who owned the company. She didn't know the founder had a son in the very hospital she had just left. She certainly didn't know that the child receiving regular transfusions on the upper floor was alive because of what flowed from her veins each time she donated. She simply walked, head down, jacket pulled tight. Another invisible woman heading home in a city that had never once asked her name. 3 floors above the blood bank, a different world existed. Fresh flowers instead of disinfectant. Leather recliners, imported linens, a sweeping view of the lake most residents would never see from that height. The VIP pediatric wing. In one of those rooms, a young boy named Silas Ryland sat watching cartoons, while dark red blood dripped slowly into his small arm. His father sat beside him. Damon Ryland, founder and CEO of Vitalis AI, a company that used artificial intelligence to diagnose rare diseases in children across many countries. Damon's face had appeared on major magazine covers. He had spoken at international gatherings. He had shaken hands with world leaders. His technology had caught early-stage illnesses in thousands of children who would otherwise have been diagnosed too late. And his own son was fighting for his life. Silas had autoimmune hemolytic anemia, a condition in which the immune system attacks its own red blood cells, destroying them from within. Without regular transfusions, his body could not carry enough oxygen. His organs would begin to fail. The transfusions were the only thing keeping him alive. 1 bag of perfectly matched AB negative blood regularly. Without it, his hemoglobin would drop to dangerous levels within a short time. Damon watched the blood enter his son's arm and felt the same helpless rage he felt every time. The universe had given him the power to save other people's children, yet could not save his own. Dr. Elena Voss entered, head of pediatric hematology. Brilliant. Calm in the way only those who have seen the worst can be. "How's he responding today?" Damon asked, eyes still on the IV. "His numbers should stabilize within a day, same as before." Dr. Voss checked the monitors, made a note. Damon leaned forward. How is it possible that I can fund a company diagnosing diseases across so many countries, yet I cannot secure a reliable donor for my own son? Dr. Voss looked at him, not with pity, but with patience. Because blood doesn't care about net worth, Mr. Ryland. It cares only about compatibility. A B negative is the rarest type. Less than 1% of people carry it. We cannot manufacture it. We cannot force people to donate it. All we can do is hope the right person shows up. Damon stared at the bag. Someone else's blood. A stranger's blood. The only thing standing between his son and a slow death, and he did not even know whose it was. Who donates this? He asked. Is it the same person each time? Dr. Voss paused. Donor information is confidential. You know that. The system protects the donor from pressure and protects the integrity of the process. I'm not asking to pressure anyone. I want to thank them. I want to make sure they keep coming. I want to know my son's life doesn't depend on an anonymous stranger deciding to show up. Dr. Voss set her chart down. I understand, and I can tell you this. The primary donor has been consistent for a long time. The same person. Every month, without fail, without being asked. Without knowing whose life they're sustaining. Damon's jaw tightened. For a long time. Someone had been saving his son's life for a long time, and he did not even know their name. Man or woman, rich or poor, young or old. Nothing. And I can't know who they are. No, you cannot. Dr. Voss turned back to her screen. A donor file, a name she recognized because she saw it every month. She closed the file. They'll be back. They always come back. Damon missed the pronoun. He was too focused on his son, on the bag, on the humbling truth that all his power could not do what one anonymous stranger did for free. If you're following this story, stay with me, because what unfolds next between Imani and the boy in that room will touch something deep inside you. Late one night, the floor had settled into its quiet rhythm. The low hum of machines, the soft beep of monitors, the distant murmur of a television left on low. Imani pushed her cart down the hallway, room by room. Wipe, mop, check the trash, restock, move on. She had done it countless times. She could do it with her eyes closed. The VIP room was next. She knocked softly, received no answer, and pushed the door open. The room was dark except for the blue glow of the heart monitor and a small rocket ship nightlight. In the bed, a small boy sat upright against pillows, wide awake, eyes large and frightened. "Hey there," Imani said softly. "You okay, sweetheart?" The boy studied her face. He was small for his age, thin in the way sick children become thin. Not from hunger, but from a body that could no longer make the blood it needed. "I can't sleep," he whispered. "It's too dark and the beeping scares me." Imani glanced at the door. She still had rooms to finish. Derek would check soon. She should move on. Instead, she parked the cart, walked back inside, and sat beside his bed. "What's your name?" "Silas?" "Well, Silas, I'm Imani. How about I stay a little while, just until you feel sleepy? Would that be all right?" He nodded, small and grateful. Imani told him about the ocean in Ghana, how the waves sounded different there than Lake Michigan, about fishermen heading out before sunrise and returning with nets flashing silver, about her grandmother who said the ocean remembers every kindness shown to it. Silas listened. His eyes grew heavy. Before sleep took him, he reached under his pillow and pulled out a folded paper, a crayon drawing of a stick figure with brown skin and big hands holding a red heart. "This is the Blood Lady," he said. "The Blood Lady? She comes every month." He pointed to the empty blood bag still hanging on the IV pole. "I don't know who she is, but my daddy says someone gives me their blood so I can be strong. I call her the Blood Lady. She makes me feel better." Something warm and aching moved through Imani's chest. "Do you think the Blood Lady knows she's saving you?" Silas's voice was fading. "I'm sure she does, sweetheart, and I'm sure she's happy to do it." He smiled, eyes closing. Within moments, he was asleep. Imani sat a little longer, looking at the drawing, at the empty bag. She did not connect them. How could she? She had no reason to. She was simply a CNA who cleaned rooms and gave blood in different parts of the same building, never realizing the two acts belonged to the same story. She tucked the blanket around his shoulders, placed the drawing on the bedside table, and quietly wheeled her cart back into the hallway. Imani had no idea the child she had just tucked in was the same child she had been saving for a long time, and she had no idea the truth was about to surface in the most unexpected way. Imani had come to America as a young woman with a full scholarship to study pre-med at the University of Illinois, Chicago. She arrived with a suitcase heavier than she was, 2 textbooks already read cover to cover, and a dream too large for her chest. She was going to be a doctor. Back in Accra, that dream had been everything. Her mother, Maeve, had worked relentlessly, selling at the market in the morning, cleaning offices in the afternoon, taking in laundry at night, so her daughter could study, could become what Maeve herself had never had the chance to be. The day the scholarship letter arrived, Maeve held it with both hands and wept tears of relief and joy. "You are going to heal people," she told Imani. "That is what you were made to do." Imani believed it through the hardest years of coursework and loneliness. She believed it when professors praised her steady hands in the lab. She believed it during her early clinical rotations when she felt for the first time that she was exactly where she belonged. Then her mother called. Maeve's kidneys were failing, advanced chronic disease moving fast. She needed dialysis, medication, treatment that cost more than she had earned in years. Imani did the math again and again, late at night on her dorm floor. The numbers were impossible. She could afford tuition or her mother's care. Not both. She left her studies before finishing, semesters away from her degree, semesters away from medical school applications, semesters away from becoming Dr. Imani Brooks. She became a CNA instead. The fastest path into a hospital, steady work that could cover Maeve's co-pays if Imani spent nothing on herself. And it kept her inside the place where healing happened, close enough to touch, even if she could no longer practice it. Some would have grown bitter. Imani felt the loss every day, every order she could have given, every chart she could have read, every white coat worn by someone younger. But her mother had given her something that kept bitterness from taking root. Years earlier, Maeve had taken her to a blood drive in Accra, Imani's first donation, terrified of the needle, of the blood. Maeve held her hand and spoke the words Imani would carry forever. "Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself." Imani had been donating ever since, in Accra, in Chicago, wherever she lived. Not for recognition or payment, but because she had AB negative blood and understood what that meant. It was rare. It was needed. Every time she opened her vein, someone somewhere lived who might not have lived otherwise. She didn't know who. She didn't need to. Giving was not about being seen. It was about responsibility. If you possessed something life-saving that cost little more than time and a moment of discomfort, keeping it to yourself was wrong. Her mother had taught her that, and Imani believed it as surely as she believed in breath. So she worked her shifts, cleaned her rooms, held children's hands in the dark, paid her mother's bills, and gave her blood freely to strangers she would never meet. She had given up medical school, yet she had never given up medicine. She practiced it every night in every room she cleaned, with every patient she comforted, and every time she gave her blood away for free. This story is about to turn. Stay with me so you don't miss what comes next. One afternoon, everything changed on the upper floor. Silas Ryland had been fine that morning. Breakfast, drawings, the usual question about going home, and the usual answer, soon. By midday, his skin had taken on the color of old paper. His eyes dulled. His breathing grew shallow and rapid. Dr. Voss arrived quickly. One look at the blood panel told Damon everything before she spoke. "He's in hemolytic crisis. His body is destroying red blood cells faster than we've seen. His hemoglobin is critically low and still falling." "What does that mean?" "It means his organs aren't getting enough oxygen. If we don't raise his hemoglobin within the next several hours, we're looking at organ failure. Kidneys first, then heart." Damon gripped the bed rail until his knuckles whitened. "Then transfuse him, now." "We don't have the blood, Mr. Ryland." The words struck like a blow. "What do you mean you don't have the blood?" "A B negative is the rarest type. Less than 1% of people carry it. Supplies are critically low nationwide, especially for rare types. We've called every blood bank within reach. No one has any in stock. Damon stared. This is a major children's hospital. You're telling me you can't find one bag of blood? I'm telling you, money cannot create blood that doesn't exist. Dr. Voss's voice was steady, her eyes not. We have 0 units, the only reliable donor we've had for a long time. She stopped. What? Dr. Voss looked at Damon, at Silas, at the monitor showing the numbers dropping in real time. I'll make some calls, she said quietly, and left. What she almost said would have changed everything, but she held her tongue. That silence nearly cost Silas his life. That evening, Imani heard the news while restocking supplies. 2 nurses passed, speaking in the clipped urgency reserved for crisis. Upper floor VIP, young boy in hemolytic crisis, needs a B negative. No one has any. They've been calling blood banks all day. That poor kid. If they don't find a match soon, they're talking emergency exchange. Long shot without the right type. They turned the corner and were gone. They never saw Imani standing there with an armful of linens. A B negative. Imani set the linens down slowly. Her heart beat with a deep, certain rhythm, the sound of absolute knowing. She had a B negative blood. She had donated recently, too recently. Guidelines required a longer wait. Donating again now would be too soon. Her iron might not have recovered. She could grow dizzy, faint. In rare cases, frequent donation could harm the donor. Imani knew the rules. She also knew that somewhere above her a child was dying, because no one else in the city had what she had. She walked to the blood bank and pushed open the door. The usual nurse looked up, surprised. Imani, you're not due yet. I know. I heard you need a B negative. I have it. Take mine. The nurse shook her head. You donated recently. Your levels may not be high enough. If they drop, I'm putting you at risk. There are protocols. I know the rules, Imani said, voice calm and final. I also know a child in this hospital is dying because no one else has what I have. So take my blood. I'll handle whatever comes. The nurse hesitated, then paged Dr. Voss. Dr. Voss arrived minutes later. She looked at Imani, and something heavy moved behind her eyes. She knew exactly where this blood was going. She knew the child's name, the father's name, and that the woman in faded scrubs offering her blood at risk to her own health had been keeping that child alive for a long time without ever being told. She wanted to speak. She wanted to tell Imani everything, that the boy was the same child she had comforted with stories, the same boy who had drawn her picture and called her the story lady, that his father was worth billions and had no idea she existed. But rules existed for a reason. Anonymity protected donors from pressure and exploitation. Dr. Voss had taken an oath to uphold those rules, even when every instinct screamed to break them. You understand the risks? I understand them. And you want to proceed? I need to proceed. There's a difference. Dr. Voss studied her for a long moment, then nodded and drew up a chair. The needle entered. Imani's blood, dark, warm, carrying the exact antibodies that matched only one small boy a few floors above, began to fill the bag. She closed her eyes, felt the familiar pull, the lightheadedness that came when she gave too soon. She didn't care. Her mother's words moved through her like a steady heartbeat. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. A few floors below the VIP room, Imani sat with eyes closed and arm extended, giving away what her body needed most. A few floors above, the blood bank called pediatrics. 1 unit of AB negative, fresh and ready. Dr. Voss carried the bag herself. She trusted no courier with this one. She took the stairs because the elevator felt too slow. She entered the room where Damon sat, holding his son's small hand, face gray with a fear no amount of money could touch. She hung the bag, connected the line, started the drip. Damon watched the blood enter his son's arm, dark red, warm, someone else's life flowing into his child. He didn't know whose. He simply watched. Silas's breathing eased first. Not alarmingly, but the way a body settles when it finally receives what it needs. Color returned, the waxy gray giving way to something warmer, alive. His cold fingers began to warm. Damon pressed his forehead to his son's hand. He had no words. The relief was too vast for language. A few floors below, Mani lay in the recovery chair, the room gently spinning. Her arms felt heavy. Juice and crackers sat beside her with instructions not to move for a while. She was dizzy and tired, her body telling her she had given too much, too soon. She stared at the ceiling, listening to the low hum of the refrigeration units holding the donations. She didn't know her blood was at that moment pulling a young boy back from the edge. She didn't know his father was overcome with emotion a few floors above. She didn't know the crayon drawing of the blood lady rested on Silas's bedside table beside the IV pole that had just held her donation. She knew none of it. She simply lay there, dizzy and exhausted, quietly certain she had done what was right. Two people in the same building, connected by blood, separated by floors and a wall of anonymity that was about to break. The next morning, Damon was in Dr. Voss's office before she had finished her coffee. "I need to know who the donor is." He spoke like a man accustomed to answers, like a man whose checks built hospital wings, like a man who had rarely heard no from anyone whose funding mattered. Dr. Voss set her cup down. She did not flinch. "You know I can't do that, Mr. Ryland. My son almost died last night because we ran out of blood. You're telling me one person, one single person in this entire city has been keeping him alive for a long time, and I'm not allowed to know their name. That's exactly what I'm telling you." Damon paced to the window and back. He solved problems for a living. He built systems. He fixed things. Right now, the thing that needed fixing was the gap between his son's survival and a name he was forbidden to hear. "There are laws," Dr. Voss continued. "Donor anonymity is federal protection. It exists so donors aren't pressured or harassed into giving more than their bodies can safely offer. The system works because donors trust their privacy. Break that trust and donors stop coming. When donors stop coming, children like Silas die." Damon turned. "I'm not going to pressure anyone. I want to thank them. I want to make sure they're cared for. I want to guarantee my son has reliable blood going forward." "I understand," Dr. Voss said. "But what you want does not override what they're entitled to. This person chose to donate anonymously. That choice deserves respect. It is not optional, for you, for me, or for anyone." Damon's jaw tightened. He opened his banking app and turned the screen toward her. "A substantial donation to the hospital's general fund. Right now, all I need is a name." Dr. Voss looked at the number, then at Damon with an expression that shifted something inside his chest. "If I sell that name for this amount, what does that make me? What does that make this hospital? A place where privacy has a price tag, where wealth can purchase anyone's personal information as long as the check clears." She stood. "Mr. Ryland, I am deeply sorry for what you're going through. Silas is my patient and I care for him, but I will not sell a donor's identity, not for any sum. The day this hospital prices someone's right to privacy is the day it stops being a hospital and becomes a marketplace." Damon put his phone away. His hands trembled, not from anger, but from the realization that, for the first time in his adult life, there was something his money genuinely could not buy. He left without another word. He could not buy the answer. But he was about to discover it in a way that would shatter every assumption he had ever held about who saves lives and who deserves saving. That same week, while Damon tried to purchase a name, Imani sat in another doctor's office receiving news that would break her. Maeve's nephrologist delivered the words gently, but without false hope. Maeve's kidneys had reached end stage. Dialysis was no longer enough. She needed a transplant. Without one, time was limited. Imani sat in the plastic chair and listened. She did not cry, not yet. She saved that for later. The numbers hit like a wall. A transplant carried enormous cost. Insurance would cover part, but gaps remained. Copays, medications, aftercare, rehabilitation. Imani faced a staggering out-of-pocket sum. She earned a modest hourly wage. She had almost nothing in savings. No credit card, no property, nothing to borrow against, and no one to borrow from. That night she sat at her kitchen table with calculator and legal pad, trying to make impossible numbers work. More shifts. Work every day. Skip meals. Sell things she didn't own. She could do all of it and still fall short. Then another thought arrived, quieter, colder. She could stop donating blood. Not forever, just for now. Her body was still recovering from the recent donation. She had been tired for weeks, sometimes dizzy. Iron was low. The nurse had told her to rest, eat iron-rich foods, wait the full recommended period. If she kept pushing, donating on top of double shifts, her own health would collapse. And if she collapsed, no one would be left to care for Maeve. But if she stopped, somewhere in this hospital a child with AB negative blood would have one less chance, one less month of survival. She was choosing between her mother's life and a stranger's child. The next morning, Imani drove to the dialysis center. Maeve sat in her chair, smaller and more fragile than before. Imani told her about the transplant, the cost, the impossible math. She did not mention the blood, but Maeve knew. Mothers always know. "You're thinking about stopping, aren't you?" Imani looked away. "Mama, I need to focus on you right now. Don't you dare stop giving blood because of me, Imani." Maeve's voice was weak but carried iron. "The day you stop giving is the day you stop being who you are." "But Mama, I can't lose you." "You won't lose me." Maeve reached for Imani's hand, grip fragile, eyes fierce. "But don't save me by letting someone else's child die. That is not who I raised. That is not who you are." Imani held her mother's hand and said nothing because anything she said would have been a lie. Late that night, she sat in her car in the hospital parking lot, engine off, windows fogged. She had just finished a long shift and her bones ached with exhaustion. She cried, the ugly kind, the kind that shakes the whole body and steals breath, the kind pressed into a steering wheel because there is nowhere else for the sound to go. She cried because she was broke, because her mother was dying, because she was exhausted, because no one in the world knew her name. She cried because she had given her blood countless times and never once been thanked. She didn't want thanks, but she also didn't want to be invisible anymore. And she hated herself for wanting that, because needing recognition felt as though it cheapened the kindness itself. She cried in the dark, in an empty parking lot late at night, and no one saw her. No one ever saw her. One afternoon, Damon's world cracked open. He had come to the hospital unable to sleep, unable to stop hearing Dr. Voss say, "We don't have the blood." He had driven in the middle of the night to sit with Silas, to watch him breathe, to count the small rises and falls of his chest, and convince himself his son was still alive. He was walking from the elevator toward the VIP wing when he passed the blood bank. The door stood ajar. 2 nurses inside were talking. He would have kept walking if one of them hadn't said a name that caught him. "Monty's back again. She came in to check the schedule, wants to make sure she's set for her next donation." The other nurse laughed softly. "That woman is something else. She's the only regular AB negative donor we have. Has been for a long time. Shows up like clockwork. Never misses. Even came in early during that emergency. Imani's the reason the Ryland boy is still here. Would have been in real trouble multiple times without her. Countless donations over the years, all anonymous. She's never once asked who receives it." Damon stood frozen in the hallway, as though struck by something he could not see. His feet would not move. His heart beat so loudly he was certain the nurses could hear it. Imani. AB negative. Countless donations over the years. The Ryland boy. His son. His son's blood. His son's life. A woman named Imani. A CNA. He knew the name, not personally, but the way you know a word you've seen 100 times without reading it. Imani, the name on a badge he had glanced at and forgotten. The face he had passed in hallways without registering. The woman with the cleaning cart who was always present and never visible. He walked away from the blood bank slowly, hands trembling. He followed the sound of wheels on tile until he reached a lower floor corridor. And there she was. Imani was on her knees, scrubbing blood from the linoleum where a patient had suffered a bad nosebleed. She worked methodically, carefully, the way someone works when they take pride even in the smallest task. Blue gloves stretched over already cracked fingers, knees on the wet floor, hair pulled tight. She did not know he was there. Damon stood at the end of the hallway and watched. He had passed this woman hundreds of times, in the lobby, the elevator, the hallway outside his son's room. He had looked through her as though she were glass. She was background, furniture, nobody. And she was the reason his son was alive. He thought of the offer he had made Dr. Voss, a huge donation for a name. And And here was the name. Here was the person on her knees for a modest wage who had given her own blood freely, time and again over the years, to keep his child breathing. He had built a company worth billions on the promise of saving children's lives. His face had been on magazine covers. He had been called visionary, disruptor, genius, and his son was alive because of a woman he had never bothered to see. He stood for a long time. He didn't speak. He did not approach. He simply stood and watched and felt something open inside his chest, shame and gratitude and awe and the terrible, humbling realization that the most important person in his son's life had been invisible to him for a long time. Then he turned and walked away. It was not the right time. He did not have the right words. He did not know whether anything he could say would be enough. But everything had changed. Damon knew the truth now. Knowing the truth and knowing what to do with it are not the same. What he chose next would test whether gratitude from a man of means is a gift or a trap. He did not sleep that night. He sat in his penthouse overlooking the lake and thought about a woman on her knees. The next morning he called Dr. Voss. His voice was quieter, stripped of entitlement. "I know who the donor is. I overheard 2 nurses. I didn't hack or bribe anyone. Her name is Imani. She's a CNA here." Dr. Voss exhaled slowly. "Mr. Ryland, she doesn't know. She doesn't know it's your son. She doesn't know whose blood she's been giving. She comes in regularly, donates, goes back to work, and never asks a single question." "I know," Damon said. "I watched her last night. She was cleaning a floor." A long pause. Then, Dr. Voss spoke with new weight. "There are things you should know about her. Things I can share because they aren't medical records and because you need to understand who she is before you decide what comes next." She told him what anyone at the hospital could have said if he had ever asked. That Imani had been a pre-med student who left her studies to pay for her mother's kidney treatment, that her mother was now in end-stage renal failure and needed a transplant, that Imani worked double shifts to cover dialysis costs, that she had been donating blood since she was a teenager, that she had donated early during the crisis, against medical advice and at risk to her own health because she heard a child needed a B negative and could not walk past that need. She didn't know it was Silas, Dr. Voss said quietly. She just heard a child was in trouble. That was enough. Damon sat in his expensive office chair with its view of the skyline and thought about a woman who earned less in a year than the chair cost. A woman who had surrendered her dream of becoming a doctor to save her mother. A woman who gave her blood regularly, even when it made her unwell. A woman who cleaned the floors where his son slept and never once said she was the reason that child was alive. He thought about his company's tagline, saving children's lives with the power of AI, on business cards, billboards, the slogan of a billion-dollar empire built on the belief that technology solves human health problems. But his son's health had not been saved by technology. It had been sustained by a human being with a needle in her arm and the conviction that you do not walk past someone dying if you have the power to help. He had built an empire on the idea that technology saves lives. His son was alive because of a woman who earned a modest wage and gave her blood for free. Early the next morning, Chicago cold, finding every gap in clothing, Imani left the hospital the way she always did. Head down, thin jacket pulled tight, moving quickly toward the bus. She did not see the man leaning against the black car near the east exit. She would not have recognized him anyway. Damon Ryland was not someone whose face she had ever needed to learn. "Excuse me." Imani stopped and turned. Expensive coat, tired eyes, hands in pockets. He did not look dangerous. He looked lost. "Can I help you? Are you Imani Brooks?" Something tightened in her chest. When strangers know your full name, it is rarely good news. "Yes." "Who are you?" Damon did not answer. Instead, he asked, "Why do you do it?" Imani blinked. "Do what?" "Donate blood regularly. Why?" The tightness turned to ice. "How do you know about that?" "Please," Damon said, voice quiet and careful, as though handling something fragile. "I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need to understand why." Imani studied his face. She was good at reading people. She had learned at caring for children who could not name their pain. This man was not threatening. He was barely holding himself together. "Because I can," she said simply. "I have a rare blood type, a B negative. There aren't many of us, and people die when the supply runs out. So I show up, that's all." Damon was quiet for a moment, breath rising in the cold air. "My name is Damon Ryland. I have a son named Silas. He's been a patient here for a long time. He has a condition that destroys his red blood cells. Without regular transfusions, he dies. The only blood type that matches is AB negative." Amani felt the ground shift, not beneath her feet, but inside her chest. "For a long time," Damon continued, "one person has been keeping my son alive. One donor, the same person every time. Anonymous, consistent, never missed. The hospital couldn't tell me who. Donor confidentiality." He looked at her. "It's you, Amani? You're the one." The parking lot was very quiet. A car passed. Somewhere a bird called. Amani stood perfectly still. "Your son," she said. "What room is he in?" "The VIP wing, the room with the rocket ship nightlight." Something cracked open inside her chest, not breaking, but opening, the way a seed splits when life begins to push through. "Silas," she whispered, "you know him. I clean his room on the night shift. He can't sleep sometimes. I tell him stories." Damon's face changed. Something behind his eyes gave way. "He talks about a blood lady," Amani said, voice shaking. "He calls the blood bag the blood lady. He drew me a picture once, a stick figure with brown skin and big hands holding a red heart. He said the blood lady comes regularly and makes him feel better." She looked at Damon, eyes wet. "The blood lady, that's me. I'm the blood lady." Damon nodded. He could not speak. Imani pressed her hand to her mouth. She stood in the freezing morning in a thin jacket and felt years of anonymous giving become suddenly, achingly real. Not a bag in a cooler, not a number in a database. A child, a specific child. A boy with dark eyes and a rocket ship nightlight who could not sleep in the dark, who called her the story lady, who had drawn pictures of someone he had never met, someone who kept him alive. And that someone was her. Had always been her. "I didn't save your son, Mr. Ryland," she said through tears. "I just gave blood. Anyone with AB negative could have done the same." "But they didn't," Damon's voice broke. "For a long time, no one else showed up, only you." He stepped forward. Then, Damon Ryland, worth billions, name on buildings and magazine covers and hospital wings, did something that left Amani speechless. He knelt on the cold asphalt in his expensive coat, on his knees. But he did not kneel to say thank you. "I walked past you," he said, voice raw, "so many times. In the hallway, the elevator outside my son's room, so many times. And I never saw you. I never once looked at your face. I never once asked your name. You were saving my son's life, and I didn't even know you existed." "Please stand up," Imani said. "Sir, please." "I'm sorry." Damon meant it in a way that reached far beyond Silas. He was sorry for every invisible person he had ever passed, every CNA whose name he had never learned, every cleaner whose cart he had stepped around without a glance. He was sorry for years of not seeing. Amani reached down and took his arm gently, the way she lifted patients, the way she comforted children. She helped him stand. They stood in the cold morning, two people from different worlds, both crying, neither speaking. Because sometimes no words are large enough for what passes between people when one finally sees the other for the first time. Damon collected himself, wiped his face, cleared his throat, and spoke the way men like him speak when they want to fix things. "I want to help you. I want to pay for your mother's transplant. I want to set up a fund. I want to get you back into medical school, whatever you need, name it. I'll make it happen today." Amani looked at him. For the first time, her eyes were not sad. They were clear and sharp. "No." Damon blinked. "No, I don't want your money, Mr. Ryland." He stared. In his world, everyone wanted something. Everyone had a price. Every problem could be solved with enough zeros. "I'm offering you everything you need, your mother's surgery, your education, a better life. And I'm saying no." Amani's voice was steady. "If I accept money for blood, it stops being a gift. It becomes a transaction. My mother taught me that blood is sacred, not for sale, not to you, not to anyone." Damon opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. "Then what do you want? Because I have to do something. I can't walk away and pretend you aren't the reason my son is alive." Imani was quiet. She looked at the hospital behind her. The building she entered every night and left every morning. The place where she mopped floors and changed sheets and held children's hands and was never seen by the people who ran it. "You want to thank me," she said. "Then change how your hospital treats people like me. Not just me. Every CNA, every aide, every transporter, every person who cleans up after doctors, empties trash, brings meals, holds hands, and never receives thanks, never receives a living wage, never gets seen." She met his eyes. "You built a company that saves children with technology. That's wonderful. But there are people in this building right now saving children with their bare hands for a modest wage, and no one knows their names. You want to do something? Start there." Damon stood in the cold, looking at a woman who had just refused more money than she would earn in a lifetime. A woman who did not want his gratitude. She wanted justice, not for herself, but for everyone like her. And for the first time in a very long time, Damon Ryland felt small. Not in a diminished way, but in the way you feel small when you stand before something larger than yourself and realize you still have much growing to do. Imani did not want Damon's money, but what he did with her words would change far more than one hospital. This is the moment everything comes full circle. Stay with me as the story reaches its heart. The next afternoon, Damon brought Imani to the upper floor. She had changed out of scrubs into the nicest clothes she owned, a sweater from her mother and clean jeans. She felt out of place in the VIP wing, but today was different. Today, she was not here to clean. Damon opened Silas's door. Silas sat up in bed drawing, color good, last transfusion holding. He looked up and his face lit the way only a child's can. "Miss Imani, you're here in the daytime." He said it as though it were miraculous, because to him Imani existed only at night. The woman who appeared in the dark with a cart and stories about the ocean. "Hi, Silas." Imani's voice was steady, her eyes not. "How are you feeling today?" "Good, better. The blood lady came again." Imani looked at the empty bag on the IV pole, at the tubing that had carried her blood into this child's arm. "She always comes." Damon stepped forward and crouched beside his son. "Buddy, I want to tell you something. You know how you always talk about the blood lady, the person who gives you blood regularly?" Silas nodded. "She makes me strong." "That's right. She does." Damon looked at Imani, then back at his son. "Well, the blood lady is here. She's standing right there." Silas looked at Imani, then his father, then Imani again. A child's mind has no filter between knowing and speaking, no calculation, no hesitation. He looked at Imani, the woman who told stories of fishermen and oceans, and at the empty blood bag, the invisible hero who kept him alive, and his eyes widened. "You're the blood lady and the story lady. You're two people." Imani laughed, a short, broken sound that was half laugh, half sob. "No, sweetheart, I'm just one person. I just do two things." Silas stared with pure, unfiltered wonder, the kind that exists before the world teaches caution. Then he opened his arms. Imani crossed the room and wrapped him in a hug, the way she had held her mother, the way her mother had held her. Tight, present, as though she were pouring everything she felt through her skin into his. Damon stood behind them, silent, face overcome, tears running freely. Not from sadness, from witnessing something sacred and knowing it. Silas pulled back, reached under his pillow, and brought out a folded, worn paper. The drawing. The blood lady, stick figure, brown skin, big hands holding a red heart. He had drawn Imani long before anyone knew who she was. A child had seen her before a billionaire ever did. "This is you," Silas said, holding it up. "I made it for you. I was saving it because I knew you'd come one day." Imani took the drawing with both hands and looked at it through tears that would not stop. A stick figure on printer paper, brown skin, big hands, red heart. It was the most valuable thing anyone had ever given her. That night, Damon could not sleep. Not from worry, but from shame, and from a sentence that would not leave his mind. "Change how your hospital treats people like me." He had built a billion-dollar company on the belief that systems matter more than individuals. Imani had told him the same thing, for free, in a cold parking lot. So he fixed the system. It took time, weeks of meetings, calls, lawyers, accountants, and board conversations that moved from polite to heated to the edge of threats. But Damon was very good at making things happen when he decided they must. He funded the Invisible Heroes Initiative, a program for CNAs, aides, transporters, housekeeping, and every frontline worker who touched patients daily and earned less than a living wage. It included a meaningful across-the-board raise for support staff, a professional development fund for certifications and training, and an annual recognition ceremony where patients and families nominated frontline workers for the care they gave. He created the Maeve Brooks Medical Scholarship, named for Imani's mother. Endowed substantially, it was open to any frontline healthcare worker, CNA, aide, transporter, technician, who wanted to pursue medical education. Full tuition, full stipend, no strings. He had not asked Imani's permission to use the name. Some things you honor without asking. And he redirected part of Vitalis AI's research budget to build a national rare blood type registry, a digital platform connecting rare donors with patients who needed them in real time. Automated alerts, no more hospitals running out of AB negative simply because they did not know who carried it. The technology that built his empire was finally solving the problem that had nearly taken his son. The launch was held in the hospital auditorium on a weekday afternoon. Damon stood before hundreds, doctors, nurses, board members, media, staff from every level. In the audience sat Derek Lang, arms crossed, jaw tight. Attendance had been required. He had not been told why. Damon adjusted the microphone. I built a company to save children with technology. My face has been on magazine covers. I've been called a visionary. I've spoken at conferences where people paid high sums to hear me talk about innovation. And not long ago, my son almost died because this hospital didn't have a bag of blood. He paused. My son is alive today because of a woman who works in this building. A woman who earns a modest wage. A woman who mops floors, changes sheets, takes vital signs, and cleans up after the rest of us. A woman who donated her blood regularly over the years. Anonymous, unpaid, unrecognized, never knowing whose life she was saving. She did it because her mother taught her that giving blood is not charity. It is responsibility. He looked at Imani sitting near the back. She had not wanted to come. Dr. Voss had convinced her. I walked past that woman so many times, Damon continued. So many times, and I never saw her. I don't think I'm the only one. This hospital, and every hospital, is full of people we walk past without seeing. People who hold the system together and get paid the least for it. People who are first to touch a patient and last to be thanked. He turned to Derek Lang. Today, that changes. Derek's arms slowly uncrossed. Damon announced the Invisible Heroes Initiative. He announced the Maeve Brooks Scholarship. He announced the Rare Blood Registry. When he finished, the auditorium rose, not for him, but for the idea that the people seen least might matter most. Imani did not stand. She sat in the back row and wept quietly. Not because she was being honored, but because her mother's name was on a scholarship. Because the words she had spoken in a cold parking lot had become something real. Because for the first time, someone with power had truly listened to someone without it. In the years that followed, Imani walked into a lecture hall at the University of Illinois Chicago School of Medicine. She was older now. She carried a backpack still clipped with her old hospital ID. She wore the same shoes she had worn on night shift because she had not yet found time to replace them. She was surrounded by younger students who had never mopped a floor, never drawn their own blood, never sat with a dying child in the small hours. She sat, opened her notebook, and looked at the whiteboard where the first lesson of the semester was written. It felt like a dream, the kind you do not quite believe, even while living it. The Maeve Brooks Scholarship covered everything: tuition, books, a monthly stipend. Imani had applied without knowing who funded it. The letter came from the hospital's education office. Formal, official, no mention of Damon Ryland. She read it several times before she believed it. And there was something else. Her mother was alive. Maeve had received a kidney transplant some time earlier. The donor was anonymous. Costs were covered through a hospital charity fund Imani had never heard of. Dr. Voss had helped with the paperwork. Everything clean, official, no strings, no names. Imani suspected. She could not prove it, But she understood anonymity better than most. She had given anonymously for years. Now, for the first time, she stood on the other side, receiving without knowing, grateful without a name to thank. The symmetry was not lost on her. She sat among students younger than herself and looked at her hands. The same hands that had scrubbed hospital floors, held sick children in the dark, opened their veins countless times so a stranger's blood could keep a small boy alive. Those hands now held a medical textbook. Same hands, different purpose, same person. Her mother's voice moved through her, quiet and steady, the way it always did when Imani needed to remember who she was. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. Imani picked up her pen and began to write. Years later, on a bright morning, Imani Brooks walked across the stage. She wore a black gown and hood trimmed in the medical school color. Her name was called. When she stood, the audience erupted. Not polite applause, but something deeper, something from the gut, because enough people in that room knew her story. Classmates who had studied beside her, professors who had watched her outpace students much younger, hospital staff who had come to witness one of their own rise from the lowest rung to the highest. She received her degree, Doctor of Medicine, specialization in pediatric hematology, the very field that had defined Silas's life and, in a way she could never have predicted, her own. She turned to face the audience. In the seats, Silas Ryland sat between his father and Maeve Brooks. Silas was older now, tall for his age, healthy. His condition had entered sustained remission thanks in part to therapies developed by Vitalis AI's research division. Therapies informed by clinical observations Imani had contributed during her training. The disease that nearly took him had become the bridge connecting his treatment to her becoming a doctor. Maeve sat in a wheelchair, older, thinner, but eyes bright, back straight, wearing the same earrings she had worn the day she first took Imani to donate blood in Accra. Damon sat with hands folded. He was not crying yet. He would be. Imani looked out over the crowd and found the face she sought. Silas was holding something up, a piece of paper, creased and yellowed, edges worn thin from years of handling. The drawing, the blood lady, stick figure with brown skin and big hands holding a red heart. He had kept it. For years he had kept it. And now he held it up in an auditorium full of people smiling at the woman who had once been his midnight storyteller and anonymous lifeline, and who was now, officially, a doctor. Imani looked at that drawing and felt everything at once. Every night shift, every pint of blood, every floor mopped, every time she had been looked through like glass, every time she had sat with a frightened child in the dark and told stories of oceans and fishermen and kindness. It all came down to this, a piece of paper in a boy's hand. She did not speak. She did not need to. She looked at her hands, the same hands that had mopped floors, donated blood, and comforted a scared little boy in the dark. Now they would hold a stethoscope, but they would never forget where they had been. Thank you for walking with Imani through this journey, from invisible CNAA to the doctor who helped save the boy she had been saving all along. If this story moved you, if it changed the way you see the people you pass every day, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. Here's the truth. There are people in your life right now giving everything they have and receiving nothing in return. People who show up every day, do the hardest work, and are never seen. They are in your hospitals, your schools, your offices, your neighborhoods, mopping floors, driving buses, stocking shelves, caring for your parents and your children. And most of us walk right past them. Imani's mother used to say something I want you to carry. Blood is the one thing rich and poor share equally. When you give it, you give life itself. So I have two questions for you. When was the last time you donated blood? And when was the last time you truly saw someone you walk past every day? Share your thoughts. Share this story with someone who gives without being seen. And if you or someone you know has a rare blood type, please consider becoming a regular donor. You might be the only match for a child who is counting on you. Until next time, stay kind, stay giving, and never underestimate the power of what flows through your veins.